In June, a very close friend of mine gifted me a game by the name of Ys, the Oath in Felghana, and needless to say, it has become one of my favorite games of all time, at least top 20. But why is it that I love this game so much? Well, I think I need to state that this is one of the best remakes I've ever played. You see, Ys the Oath in Felghana is a remake of the third Ys game called Ys Wanderers from Ys. Initially released for the PC 8800 in 1989, Wanderers from Ys was eventually ported to consoles like the TurboGrafx CD, the Super Nintendo, and the Sega Genesis in 1991, re-released for the PS2 and Windows in 2005, and finally re-released for the PSP in 2010 under the new name Ys the Oath in Felghana. I'll be reviewing my experience with the Steam port. So now, let me tell you why I love this game. Our story takes place 3 years after the events of Ys 1 and 2. Our hero is named Adol Christen, an adventurer who travels the world. Accompanying him is his friend Dogi, who are traveling back to his hometown of Redmont. However, upon arriving, monsters are seen attacking a girl, and upon saving her, it is revealed that this girl is Elena Stoddard, a childhood friend of Dogi's. Through talk with the townsfolk, Adol finds out that the townsfolk are being threatened by Veilstein Castle. Just then, a townsman warns that there was a cave-in the quarry, and Adol heads off to the Tiger Quarry. Inside the quarry, Adol fights a creature in purple named Dularn, and after defeating it, the creature retreats. Adol finds the mayor of Redmont, Edgar, and rescues him after defeating the creature known as Elfale. Upon defeat of the creature, Adol is awarded a mysterious statue. After going back to check on the mayor, he's seen being attacked by a blonde-haired pretty boy who is revealed as Chester Stoddard, Elena's brother who mysteriously disappeared months ago. As Adol keeps on exploring the land of Felghana, he keeps finding more statues, eventually learns that Chester plans on killing Count Maguire, the king of Veilstein Castle, due to the fact Count Maguire supposedly killed off Chester and Elena's village back on Genos Island. After losing the statues to Chester, Chester takes them back to Veilstein Castle and uses the power to control almost all of the inhabitants in the castle. Upon reaching the top of the castle, Adol and Chester duel, and after Chester's defeat, he attempts to kill Count Maguire but is stopped by Elena. After coaxing, Chester agrees reluctantly. However, rumbling occurs, and when Chester accuses the Count of foul play, the Count reveals that he is a pawn for Bishop Nicholas, the head of the church back in Redmont. Nicholas then defeats Adol and Chester and kidnaps Elena. After preparing, Adol heads off to Genos Island to stop the bishop from summoning the being known as Galbalon. Upon reaching the island and defeating Dularn, who is revealed to be Sister Nell, who is another church member, he traverses his way through the ruins. Adol reaches the center and defeats the bishop, but realizes time is running out and needs to stop Galbalon, and with the help of Chester, Adol does so. However, things do not end well for Chester, as he stays behind and kills Galbalon, which causes Genos Island to sink, much to the dismay of Elena. After a while, Adol and Dogi decide to head off on another adventure. Elena waves them goodbye as the two set off. The plot is rather well written considering it was an adaptation from an 80s action RPG. In terms of characterization, Oath of Felghana heavily reminds me of Majora's Mask characters, although not on a bigger scale. You learn of these characters' desires and ambitions, which is something I love in terms of RPGs. For example, Ida is grieving over the death of her grandson Bob, and after giving his pendant to her, she seems to feel better. Good characterization of the world definitely makes up for how much of a piece of wood Adol is. Adol is the stereotypical silent protagonist. However, the reason why this bothers me is that in the older versions like the Genesis and SNES versions, Adol actually spoke. And while it's implied he speaks here, there's no dialogue that is in like other characters. I get Adol's the hero and all, but if he spoke in the older versions of the game, why suddenly remove that with the remake? It doesn't help the game has voice acting, but we'll get to that in a bit. In terms of graphics and sound, holy shit, this game excels in both departments. The character sprites are nicely rendered, visual effects like magic are nice, and backgrounds are gorgeously rendered, and the areas are nicely designed such as areas like the Tiger Quarry, Veilstein Castle, the Clock Tower, Genos Island, and especially with the overrun ruins in the Lava Zone. The only exceptions in terms of level design is the Elder Mountains and the Abandoned Mine. The Elder Mountains mainly because of the stupid ice physics. Yes, you get an upgrade to stop the slipperiness, but a lot of people know I hate ice levels. The Abandoned Mine is just a whole lot of blech. It's dark, a maze, and just an utter bore in terms of both design and looks. Sound, however, the soundtrack is just Jesus fucking Christ is just orgasmic. There are so many songs that are just incredible. Give some of these a listen. The Felghana band did a fantastic job with this soundtrack. The only track I do not like is Snare of Darkness, the theme of the abandoned mine. Ugh. As for sound effects, it's nice. The sword slash and attacks connecting is great, the magic attacks sound awesome, the sounds of defeated enemies are great. One thing bugs me though. The PSP port had voice acting, and in this game there is none unless you put in a patch. Even then, Adol still doesn't speak and is told via narration of what he talks about. It may be minor to some, but it irks me. The game is fantastic in sound and graphics, but let me tell you where Oath and Felghana really shines. Gameplay. Oath and Felghana is an action RPG. Using the attack key, Adol can swing his sword and can perform different moves based on where his position is. For example, jumping and swinging makes Adol do an aerial attack, but if you time the swing at the peak of his jump, Adol can do a sword slam that can briefly stun enemies. Comboing attacks is key to beating enemies easily. When you kill enemies, they even drop these capsules that temporarily increase your stats such as MP, strength, and defense. When you hit enemies, you also get a hit bonus which adds to a multiplier. This multiplier gives you bonus experience for enemies you kill up to double the normal amount. Adol is also really good at magic combat. Throughout the game, Adol finds these rings that let him perform magic attacks with gemstones, letting him perform stronger variants. The fire ring and rubies allow Adol to shoot fireballs that can light up torches for puzzle solving as well as melting ice. The wind ring and emeralds allow Adol to perform a circling wind attack and can even let him traverse long distances. And lastly, the earth ring and the topazes allow Adol to do a charge attack that can not only knock out walls, but let him avoid damage if timed correctly. Adol also has a boost mode, which is that white circle in the bottom left. When using it, Adol's attack speed and power just increase for about 10 seconds. However, it refills after a minute or two, meaning it is not very spammable. I'd say use it during boss fights. Speaking of boss fights, these are definitely the high point of the game, seeing as these fights are fast, frantic, and damn challenging. Some are manageable, but a few utterly pissed me off. The boss fight against Felghana can suck a dick. Your jump timing needs to be perfect to dodge her projectiles, and fireballs are the only way to damage her. Gladys gave me a fuck ton of trouble considering his attacks hurt, and the earth attack is the only way to even get close enough to deal damage. Death Felion's attacks are so frequent and high damaging, and Zerdos has only one tiny area it can be damaged, so these battles will put you to the test on your reflexes. When you aren't battling, you can do things like upgrading your equipment. Using gold and rabbit ore that Adol can find, Adol can upgrade his equipment to a maximum of 3 levels to his sword, his armor, and shield. And seriously, get these upgrades because the swords grow to really strong levels with each upgrade. You can also do side quests, but they're very rare, so just getting these herbs for some kid, escorting an annoying kid back to safety, or simply locating rabbit ore in Redmont. Oath and Felghana is not a very long game, seeing as my first playthrough took 7 hours. When you beat the game, you unlock a boss rush mode, which I still have yet to complete. And if you play the PSP version, you get New Game Plus, so that is definitely a bonus of the PSP version, seeing as the Steam version removed this. You also unlock Inferno mode, which is pretty much Dark Souls difficulty, or at least that's what other people would say. No, seriously, this difficulty is hard as fuck. If I had to state one thing I didn't like about Oath and Felghana, is that the jumping can be a little loose at times, probably at its worst in Veilstein Castle. But other than that, Ys the Oath and Felghana is definitely a game I recommend playing. It's got great graphics, music, characters, plot, combat, and boss fights. I will warn you though, play on normal or lower if you've never played an action RPG. Anything higher and you will get your ass kicked. And hell, if you like it, give the other games a try considering Ys 8 came out recently. Oath and Felghana is definitely a hard but fun game you should try. I'm Payday, and thank you all for watching.